Welcome to Flavor Flex, good food, where it's all about having a good time in the kitchen. Back when I was a teenager, my brother-in-law Larry would roll up to the house and tell me to grab my quarters. We were heading to the American Raceways, one of my favorite things to do. I'd run around the house, grab some quarters, head out to his yellow GTO, loved his muscle cars, and we would fly up to the raceways in the hopes of getting on the Star Wars machine. Afterwards, oftentimes he'd be back in his kitchen making his favorite dish of fried green tomatoes, and every time he would ask me if I would give him a try, and every time I would say no way. And now I wish I hadn't said that, because I'd recently traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, where we stopped at a little restaurant, and sure enough on the menu was fried green tomatoes with tomato bacon jam. And woo, it was like my taste buds were back in that yellow GTO going 100 miles an hour, because they were incredible. Don't make the mistake I did and give these a try, because this is a great recipe and you're going to love it. Are you ready to cook? Then let's go. Flavor Flex.
Good food, good mood.
Okay, here we are. Let's cook. First you want to do is grab some green tomatoes, 3 or 4. If it's the summertime, it's easy to get people growing them. To get some of the ones that haven't ripened yet. Otherwise, a lot of the big grocery stores will have green tomatoes. You want them to be green. A little bit of red is fine, but as they start getting red, you'll start to see them be a little bit soft, and you want to avoid that. So you want to get firm, but not extra hard green tomatoes. So these are perfect. And what you want to do, of course, is just slice off the ends. And then you want to cut these into 1/4 inch slices. If you get them to where they're too thin, they get to be kind of on the little bit mushy side. And then if you get them to where they're too thick, then they can be kind of a little bit hard. So that's pretty much a good slice right there. And then you want to put them on to a wire rack. And what I like to do is sprinkle them with some coarse salt. What that does is dries up the tomato a little bit so that the coat's easier and the coating sticks to it better. Just draws out a little bit of the moisture. So once you get all those sliced on a rack, covered with some salt, we'll come back. We'll brush the salt off so they're not going to be all real salty. Okay, now we got all the tomatoes laid out and salt on the one side. You're just going to flip them over and do the same on that side. Just a little bit of coarse salt over them, and we'll come back and wipe them off and ready to go. Okay, now let's get the breading and the egg mixture ready to get the tomatoes coated and ready to fry. So, for the breading, we're going to add 1.5 cups of flour and 1 cup of cornmeal, 1/2 cup of panko breadcrumbs, and we got 1.5 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, and this is the game changer. A teaspoon of Slap Yo Mama's Cajun seasoning. Woo! You're going to love that. You got to get yourself some of that. And throw that in there, and let's mix that up. And we'll get that in our half of our breading station bowl. Now, for the egg mixture, we got 1 egg. You want to mix that up a little bit. Add to it 1 cup of buttermilk. Okay, into that we're going to add 4 teaspoons of chili sauce. Woo, that's going to add some flavor. And into this we're also going to add a little bit of Slap Yo Mama, just about 1/4 teaspoon, so give it a couple shakes. And a couple shakes, about 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder. Okay, let's get these things breaded up and in the pan. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to take your tomato slices and just pat them dry, brush off the extra salt, and once you do that, we're going to dip them in the buttermilk mixture, and then dip them in the breadcrumb cornmeal mixture, and one more time. And there we go. Do that with all those tomatoes. And meet me over at the stove. Okay, so you got your oil nice and hot. You want to make sure it's somewhere between 350 and 375 degrees, which we are definitely just about there. So we're going to grab these tomatoes and we're going to gently drop them into the oil. You only want to do a couple at a time, maybe 3. If you put in too many and you crowd the pan, you're going to possibly drop the oil the temperature, which is going to end up making them a bit soggy. So give them a couple minutes per side until they're nice and brown, and then we'll flip them and cook the other side. Okay, now let's flip it to the other side. Now that that's nice and brown. And as soon as that's done, we'll put it on a pan with some paper towels to drain. Okay, now it's cooked on both sides. Let's get those on some paper towels and meet me back at the counter. Tomato bacon jam, great for those meat cheese cracker trays, especially great for fried green tomatoes. Now let's go to the stove. What we want to do is chop up the onions and the tomatoes. So you're going to get 1 medium to large onion, and we're going to do our standard dice to it. What we're going to do is get 1.5 pounds of tomatoes. In this case, I use the Roma tomatoes. You're going to slice those into pieces and then turn them and chop those as well, about the same size. Once we get those done now, get all the tomatoes and the whole onion chopped up, we'll go over to the stove and get this cooking. Okay, in a pan that you've cooked 1 pound of bacon chopped up, leave a couple tablespoons of the bacon oil, bacon grease. To that you're going to add 1 chopped onion. Let that cook for a few minutes to get some softness to it. Scrape the bottom of the pan, the pot, so you get off the bacon that was there cooking. Go ahead and cook that for a couple minutes. Okay, now we're going to add to that 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Get that stirred in. 2 teaspoons of paprika. 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon of ground mustard. 2 tablespoons of white sugar. And 1.5 pounds of chopped Roma tomatoes. Stir that up. And 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Okay, now let's cook for a few minutes. Add 1 pound of chopped bacon. Woo! That's gonna be good. Now we're going to turn the heat down and let that simmer for about 30 to 40 minutes. And it's going to start thickening up. Okay, you know what it's time for? Time to give it a try. And wow, would you look at that. The tomato bacon jam came out nice and thick. The fried green tomatoes are beautiful, brown and crispy. Let's get some on a plate. Let's get some of this tomato bacon jam on it, and let's give it a try. Tomato is nice and crunchy. Wow. Wow. The tomato bacon jam just adds some pizzazz and wow factor to it. It's definitely a game changer. You've got to try it. Larry would have just loved these, and I know you're going to too, so give these a try. Here's to good food, good family, and good friends.